Look, I know we've had this conversation before, but there actually are a lot of reasons why I don't typically review games. The first one being, look, I'm pretty poor in terms of disposable income right now, so I don't have regular access to all 6 currently relevant platforms, and I don't get to buy or rent every new game, and I don't have the free time to play them to reviewable lengths. The second one being, look, there's already a guy doing hilarious and brilliant reviews of new games, and there's another guy doing hilarious and brilliant reviews of classic games. And if I try to do either one, it'll only further highlight how much better they are at this than I am. So essentially, I decided a while ago that if I ever was going to review something and have the review carry any meaning or interest for me or anyone else, it would have to be something offbeat and unusual that had hardly been reviewed or even noticed anywhere else. That appealed to me greatly, both for feeding my natural, pasty, European-descended white urge to claim discovery of things I stumble upon, and because I, like the rest of us, despise the current state of gaming where overhyped million-dollar blockbusters dominate the chatter, squeezing the smaller titles out of the loop, and if I were to discover a diamond in the rough, it'd let me help that cause instead of just bitching about it. So, cutting to the chase. Our subject today will be Barnyard Blast Swine of the Night, an action title you can probably find wherever your local retailer keeps the bargain price DS games. It comes to us courtesy publisher DSi, who we're all supposed to hate because they made an M&M's kart racing game, and I'll be completely honest when I admit I only took a second look myself because of the cover art. A cowboy pig firing a pistol, flanked by a backdrop displaying a gothic-haunted castle, cycloptic bats, and what appears to be a pumpkin-headed mummy. Fuck yes, I was intrigued. How can you not be intrigued by something like that? You know, it didn't used to be this way. Those of you under the age of 15 will just have to take my word for it, but not long ago, that kind of cover image would have seemed positively ordinary. Once upon a time, when you strolled down the video games aisle, you didn't see an endless field of space marines and football players. You saw oddities in abundance. A Brooklyn plumber who saves a mushroom princess from a turtle king. A Greek warrior who fights ogres with a giant yo-yo. Hell, by the time you got to the earthworm wearing the spacesuit, he seemed entirely appropriate and not at all sticking out. I know. This is like the least hip, in-the-know gamer thing to do, right? Impulse buying a game you've never heard of from the most notorious publisher of crappy shovelware, not named Ubisoft, because you liked the cover. In my defense, I didn't really commit to the purchase until I flipped to the back cover and gave it a read, and this is what I found. One Halloween night, young piglet Cliffy Belmont is caught TPing an ancient castle ruled by darkness and swept inside by horrendous creatures. Instantly aware of the peril, his father, Robert Belmont, equips himself with a fully loaded gun and rushes into 6 different worlds with tough monsters and bosses. Is Robert a bad enough dude to rescue his son? So, yeah. Cliffy, as in ubiquitous Gears of War Helmer Cliffy B, Belmont, as in the similarly horror-themed Castlevania series Belmont family, and a bad dude's reference, and this is just on the cover? Was this for real? Not just a new retro-style platformer, but one with a sense of humor about retro platformers? Yeah, that was worth $15 to see if it was any good. Anyway, there are 6 levels covering a graveyard, a castle, a swamp, a volcano, a forest, and a much bigger castle. Gameplay progresses right to left with rare upward and downward scrolling platform style. The design and the jokes want to remind you of Castlevania, but its closer relative in terms of action and enemy behavior is ghosts and goblins. Most of the enemies are mummified, vegetable-headed zombies who continuously respawn by bursting up from the ground, because where else does a zombie come from? It can get a little hairy when they pile up, but seasoned players will immediately recognize the opportunity to grind your way to a nice collection of extra lives. You got 4 weapons selectable from the bottom screen menu with which to make your way: pistol, shotgun, whip, and dynamite. You get them all right at the start of the game in a cute little parody of tiresome weapon upgrade cutscenes, and true to the logical illogic of retro games, your pistol has infinite ammunition, but your whip doesn't. Beating down the bosses and mini-bosses that guard each level yields various optional power-ups such as super speed, high jump, and health regeneration. The graphics are standard 16-bit era throwback style, with 3 or 4 frames of animation per character and lots of repeating textures, but it's all skillfully rendered in an art style that evokes the watercolor illustrations of a children's storybook. The art just isn't pretty. In some spots, particularly a moonscape backdrop in the first level, it's pretty stunning just as digital painting in its own right. And the unifying effect of this design choice makes the grab bag of goings-on, cowboy pigs, vegetable mummies, at one point the Grim Reaper comes at you with a lightsaber, fit together. You don't often see games these days where technique makes up so much for the technology. But the real star of this game is the humor. It's a funny game, glibly self-aware of the inherent silliness of late 90s platform games it's emulating, but also very much in love with getting to be one. Just for one example, as Robert sets out to rescue Cliffy, his wife reminds him to also pick up some bread. Slightly aghast at this, Robert takes a pause before grimly intoning, "The time for bread has passed. Perhaps forever." See? That's cute. Other gags spoof the cyclical nature of franchise storylines and hint-giving characters. It's not exactly George Carlin, but it's at least the level of zippy satire you see in the better webcomics. And you know what else? I really like Robert Belmont as a character. I like that the lead hero of a youth-targeted action game is a married farmer with kids. How often do you see that? Usually the only reason for a game hero to have a family is so they can get killed and spur him into justice. The notion of a parent having to rescue an imperiled child adds a welcome level of gravity to the typical save-the-blank platform narrative. Plus, he's just a well-designed hero. Every time things got a bit frustrating, the constant visual reminder that I was playing as a zombie-killing cowboy pig made me smile and spurred me to keep going. It has the usual nagging flaws of a budget title. It's ultimately a little too short. The replay value is questionable. There's some wonky hit detection, and some of the enemies are so overpowered. Also, while it bills itself as an old-school console platformer, it's actually set up more like an arcade side-scroller, which means it frequently plays things cheap, and the only method for avoiding danger is to die, learn, and come back for more, reducing any semblance of strategy to the oldest and most basic in gaming lore. Move correctly, do not die. So, Barnyard Blast is not a great game, but it's a good game. It's fun to pick up and play, it's well art-directed, the controls are solid and deceptively broad, and the music is pretty good too. Plus, guys, it's a new game with a brand new character and a classic style we don't see enough of anymore. DSi, Sanic, listen up. I'd buy another Robert Belmont game, DS or otherwise. It's a solid B+, and I recommend you check it out, especially if you're an old-school gamer who hasn't played a fresh side-scroller for a while, or a young'un looking for something amusing to play through. Plus, dude, zombie hunting cowboy pig with a whip.